Good morning, everyone. It's a tough act to follow after the discussion, but I think we're going to be building on what's been said in the last session. I think I'm happy that they had that. So without further ado, if they can just bring up the slides, we can just go ahead and start. Until they do that, just a little bit about myself. I'm a little bit of old school. When I went to college, there was no calculators. So my first year of college was when they discovered calculators, or they invented calculators. And I've been journey all through that in the United States and with the US Air Force and coming back to the Middle East and here. Today, I would talk about a very important topic. It's a very close and dear to my heart. I've been involved in this for many years. When I was in the military, as we dealt with the environment and the carbon footprint and all the issues that had to deal with it and the inventions that we had to deliver. But now we're talking about how do we boost sustainability and how do we look at financing these things. Okay. So the journey today, we just basically try to talk about a little bit about us. I wouldn't be Lebanese if I don't do a little bit of selling, so I have to do a little bit of selling. Then we're going to talk about sustainability, so sustainable development. Again, like the panelist says, we need to define it a little bit, dive deep into it, and then look at available financing options and the different tracks that when you talk about sustainable development, it will take in whether it's a sustainable technology development and the financing means for that, or we talk about options for sustainability project and what does that mean and how does it differ, or is it part of the smart city or cognitive city kind of setup. A little bit about us, Vitreous LLC. Basically, it's a boutique advisory firm. And as my father asked, he asked me quite a while, what is it that you do? One day I'm in research and development, looking at helmet-mounted displays and for fighter pilots. The next thing I'm managing industrial infrastructure for the Air Force, weapon facilities. The second thing I'm here in the Middle East doing e-government strategies or doing project development, and it confused him. What is it that you do? And I told him in my later part of the years, I'm a business doctor. We're an advisory firm. People come to us, businesses come to us with issues, whether they want to grow, whether they have internal issues, and we help them overcome those issues and to achieve their objectives. But while one of the customers came to us with a vision. So in this vision, my job was to create, and our job was to take that vision from his mind and make it into a reality. So I told him, basically, we're business doctors, but we also make dreams come true. So my job is to make the dreams come true. And then if we look at different services, basically, like I said, it's the transaction and enabling business solutions and project development. But we have passions. We have areas of expertise that we like to focus on, and we also follow trends. We talk about smart mobilities and public-private partnership. This is an area where we excel in, is developing business models, sustainable models for mobility and development projects, mega projects, basically small cities or communities or themed projects. And then we looked at commercializing sustainable technology. Coming from the research and development within the US Air Force, we used to do technology transfers of technologies and basically the ability to take that technology and commercialize it. Many of the technologies that we use today are things that we worked on when I was in the military. And also we focus on agri-tech, which is something that's very close in food security issues. Now, let's talk a little bit about sustainable development and sustainability, just to kind of put things in perspective. basically, like the panelists have said, is what do we do today to fill our needs? How we behave as citizens? And how do we meet our needs, and how do we leave the cities and leave it better for the future generations? We have needs today. We want to be happy today. We want to live our life and grow and have specific requirements, but at the same time we want to do it in a way that preserves the resources and preserves and hand it off to our children and new generations in a better way. So sustainable development, and from 100,000 feet or 50,000 feet, it's quite a really big from a macro level. And as we go into sustainable built environment, is basically going a little bit down in a little bit of macro level, and looking at how do we design cities in a way that they are sustainable. Now that means a lot of things. Okay, a sustainable city in a rainy forest, in an area where there's a lot of rain, is a little bit different of a sustainable city in a desert, or a sustainable city in Europe, in cold environment. So the definition is a little bit changed, but how we approach it and how we deal with it, it's quite important. Whether we use local materials and reusable or regenerated materials, is quite important. How we design it in a way that's smart, because smart cities or cognitive cities are an element of building sustainable cities or sustainable built environment. It makes no sense to build a new city if we don't have proper mobility, people that can get around. And I agree with my panelists that data is going to be really crucial of how we do this. Sustainable development looks at probably in the foremost in terms of resource conservation, promoting social equity, economic development. So we don't want to outsource everything to outside the world. We want to make sure that when we build these cities, we mobilize and create a circular economy for people to grow. We want to be able to preserve the resources, basically more energy efficiency, water efficiency, waste management and recycling. How do we preserve those resources? And it comes from initial design. If you design an energy efficient building, then you're able to use less power, which means that the infrastructure that the country builds can last longer and can provide other areas. We want to build through the design practices and promote health. I remember times when I used to go to LA, and you can see a black cloud in LA, where you have the emissions from cars, and you can see it from miles and miles coming into LA. But now that changed because the regulations have changed. The people have recognized that this air is not good for them, and it's creating a lot of cancers and so on. So it changed. Now, when we talk about sustainability, it's a matter of perspective, and our dear panelists have mentioned that a little bit in the previous session. But we look at the perspectives of government and regulators. It's quite interesting because with regulators, they say, well, how much is it going to cost us? How do we regulate this? Well, how does it impact our economy, our competitiveness for the industry? This is questions that every single country is battling with, especially in North America and Europe. If we impose more regulations, is that going to make our companies less competitive globally? How do we deal with all of that? If we look at another perspective of a developer looks at this, okay, well, what's my return on investment? Is this going to cost me more? What does that mean for me today? Am I going to make money? Okay, and so forth. So his perspective on sustainability is a little bit different. Contractors. Well, contractor says sustainability, well, I get the design, I build the building, or I do the infrastructure, great, What do I have to deal with it? But he doesn't understand that he has to deal with noise, with dust, a lot of different things that you have to implement. But that costs money. So to him, it's a way, how do I save money rather than spend money? If you look at the customers, and my friend from Norway or the Netherlands said, basically we look at home buyers, and it says, coming into a sustainable home or a green home, is that going to cost me money? Do I get a return on investment? Basically, is the energy savings that I'm get out of this, does it make sense? And we have this an education process in doing this. Entrepreneurs, I can tell you what, everything for an entrepreneur is an opportunity to make money. So if you're an entrepreneur, wow, there's another buzzword, let me find a way to make money out of it. So they will come up with solutions. They're the innovators that will bring this. Financiers is basically looking at the risks. How do they create new products? What is involved? Is it something that I can handle? I can sell if I want to create an financing instrument for this, or like a green bond or green sukuks into this. So it's a different perspective from a financier perspective. Fund managers, again, do I need to create a new fund, a green fund? What does that mean? What do I target? And in terms of those fundings. It's just all a matter of perspective for how we look at sustainability from a different. I mean, I took a little bit of the cynical view, but believe me, when you go into all of these people, and if you're an entrepreneur, you create a product, you will hit these blocks and you'll hit these kind of perspectives. So you have to overcome it, you have to educate people onto this. Now, if we look at finance, now, we're done with the definition of sustainability and so on, so let's look at the different mechanism to finance projects of sustainability. Now, this splits into two areas, two categories. People who develop sustainable technologies. Those technologies, for example, a new ultra-efficient HVAC system, basically a new way to recycle waste to generate energy, a technology, and a project. How do I finance a mega project? And then sometimes these things intertwine. And for example, I'm working on a project today with food security and agri-tech. So at one point in time, it took the technology perspective. It's a technology out of Norway. It's basically taking space technology and applying it here on Earth in the agri-tech business. And once that technology has been evolved and developed, and we made it into really a working set, now we have to get into the project and to finance those projects. So in here you have different mechanisms. One, you look at when you start like a technology or a project, is basically you coming in and you're using some of your own funds, friends funds, angel funds, and so forth. But really, this is quite important. It's the ecosystem that finances and create innovation. Okay, when we talk about Silicon Valley, for example, okay, what does that mean? If a lot of people say, I want to do a Silicon Valley, to them it's a real estate investment. It's basically taking and building a city with buildings and very good internet connectivity and so on. And now I have a Silicon Valley. But Silicon Valley is completely different. It's basically, you have universities, and those universities do research, create technologies, invent technologies. With that, they need a lifeblood, which is the finance part. You have investors that would come in and invest in these technologies. So it's an ecosystem that you build that allows you to create. And finance guys are really an integral part of this. And private finance, and all of us taking a part of this in financing sustainable technologies, sustainability is quite important, and looking and how do we do that and achieve that. Now, I'm involved in this for quite a long time, and every time I create something kind of innovative and so forth, and how to gather funds for the projects that I do, but it really revolves into these categories. So let's dive a little bit and talk about sustainable technologies from a technology perspective, okay? I have an idea. I'll take a friend of mine. He's a professor in mechanical engineering, and the guy has like 30, 40 patents under his belt. And basically, we sat down and said, okay, I have these patents. Which one can I make sense? We took one that involves, for example, it's an ultra-efficient outdoor cooling system that it's the only one in the world that will work in hot and humid environment. So in here, we started with this process of looking at it, looking at the market, is it sellable, what the cost is, and so forth. And then we did our homework. We built our plans, where do we manufacture it, how do we, the business model onto which will people accept it, and building the prototype. In doing that, basically we have a pre-startup type of expenses, which was basically personal funds that was put into this, to put all this information together, the designs, everything that needs to be done. But then we had to do our homework, and again, with that we use our personal funds, but we also use some investors, like strategic investors, that allowed us to prototype and build the project. Similarly with the agri-tech business, is getting investors that allows you to build this and make it into happen. So once that is done, then we go into establishing the infrastructure of the company, which is already done. The manufacturing part is already done. We do a product development, and we basically sell. And in here, you have many different avenues. When you prototype, you have avenues of research funds, for example, or government support funds, tax incentives in the States and Canada, and so forth. But you can also raise money from VCs, for example. Some people use crowdfunding in raising the money. Now, this is just kind of going through the different growth in terms of trying to use some funding from private equity as you grow in the business. So, the business, when you talk about private equity, they want to see financials. They want to see growth. They want to see uptake. So you want to have that set up into place to get into private banking and private equity. And when you go to basically the other sorts of funds, like the energy performance contracts, if the project deals with energy efficiency and so forth. Now, being involved in the U.S. Air Force with research and development, I love space, I love aviation, and I had the chance to work with NASA on some projects in the late 80s. But I chose this to show you, because I wanted to make a point. Today, if I come in the Middle East, and I say I want to create a space station, or in the instance here, I want to do, like you will see here, the company ClearSpace. The space is cluttered with junk. This company came up with the idea of launching these robots into space to collect the junk. Because if you have too much junk, you won't have access to space. It becomes too dangerous. Now, if I come up, the question is, if I come up here to a group of financiers and maybe strategic investor says, I want to create a company that goes and collect junks in space, and most likely I'll be kicked out of the room. Are you kidding? You're dreaming. But with a proper ecosystem and infrastructure, this company was able to raise $51 million. Previous companies have been able to raise almost $400 and $500 million, over 1 billion dirhams or 1 billion riyals. Okay, I'll just move forward a little bit. Now, this is the point. When we talk about sustainable technology, because I have had to go out and I have a new invention that's quite important, it saves money, but then you go out And like certain investors said, well, the risk, have you tried it? I don't know if this is going to work or not. It's pretty difficult to foster innovation and to achieve what we need to achieve in terms of whether it's a smart city, a cognitive city, a smart built environment, and so on. And part of having a sustainable built environment is have technologies that support you in making, nanotechnology. Now you have windows that you could put a nanotechnology film which generates solar, which takes solar power and solar energy and convert it into power. Okay? So now you have also materials, sustainable materials, that allows you to absorb carbon dioxide. But so investing in sustainable technology is quite important in a way that allows us to achieve what needs to be achieved in a sustainable built environment. Now we go into the projects. And this is something dear to my heart because, like I said, I like to make dreams come true. And some of those dreams are a bit complex, and it involves a lot of different things. And I've been lucky to have incredible teams and professionals that I work with that basically together we're able to put all of this together. But it always starts with a vision. And in this case, and I don't know why because I created this in Mac, and they say Mac is compatible with Windows, there's a result. It's not. So I'm a bit more careful in creating my slides. But let's talk about a sustainability park. Let's say we want to do a sustainable technology park. Okay, something like a Silicon Valley for sustainability. And we look at, this is my vision. Well, I have to sit down and discover what that means. How do I attract investors to come into this? I need research and development to come into this. So how I design this park or this city or this small development that allows me to do this. Now, if you look at here in Dubai, for example, it's on a city scale, okay? If you want to come into Dubai, it's easy. So I have easy access. You want to create a company, it's easy. Very easy. Almost 24 hours you can create a company. So you have a lot of access, but now comes the real hard part. R&D, innovation. Us as investors and entrepreneurs and financiers taking our part in creating these innovations and creating this park. So we'll be setting up the business model of how we do that. And then we create the seed investments, and then we go through the debt equity financing and offtake agreements and uptakes and so forth into the execution. But in here, we have many different resources that we can access for doing this. Usually, in some cases, government grants, incentives, development funds, and we can go. We talk about. I'll talk a little bit more on green sukuk or green bonds and different mechanisms in terms of public-private partnership, which also is an area where we can finance these projects. So if we talk about green sukuk, because these projects usually in the hundreds of millions of dollars, and it could approach $1 billion and $1 billion plus kind of projects. Green sukuk is a very attractive mechanism or financial instrument to finance some of these projects. It can go from energy projects, major energy projects, renewable energy, water, waste reduction and waste recycling, green transportation solutions or mobility solutions, and also food security. Okay. So, and this is something I'm working on as we speak, actually in the food security area. But there are, how to channel these things into the projects. Basically, when you get your finances are in order in terms of whether you have an offtake agreements that basically if you're doing an energy project or if you have some sort of a bankable financial solutions and you work with the government, then you're probably have a better chance of creating a green sukuk or to finance some of these projects because they're long term and you can get them rated and so forth. Now, from a financing perspective, if we look at a SWOT analysis of green sukuk, it offers financiers very good returns. It's a growing market today. I know in green bonds it's growing, and we would like to get the Islamic instruments into that and make it growing. There's a wide range of projects that this would apply to, like I said, and I just showed a list of them in terms of water, energy, food security, and so forth, or basically sustainable themed cities. And also it has a reduced risk because everything is pretty much structured in the financials and the agreements that are being set. It's quite complex. That's the weakness of this. There's kind of a risk with the issuer because it's a new product that's coming onto financing a project and they're not sure. The opportunities, there's a growing demand for this, and I think if we do that, then we're able to propagate this kind of financial instrument. Public-private partnership. This is quite important because I've dealt with this, the mobility, when we're doing integrated public transport in Saudi and being an advisor to some of the government entities there. It's quite important in a way to finance. It's basically the government leveraging private sector to implement some of the infrastructure projects. Now, and they're doing that, quite successfully for energy, and now they're doing for water desalination or water conservation, and basically doing retrofits in terms of some of the old infrastructures. But I'd like to see that going beyond that into basically food security issues, cognitive cities, and try to bring, like what the panel's here is a private entity and working with NEOM and building this models of collaboration between the two entities, and it will expedite this kind of sustainable technologies and so on. Of course, if we look at do a little bit of SWOT from a financing perspective, quite good returns with public-private partnerships. I know that because I'm into this when you do the financials. You have the government backing when you do this, and also it's a new market. And if you come up through innovative financing means, meaning I have a project, and this particular project it costs a lot of money, but it's an important infrastructure. If you take food security, for example, it's an important infrastructure for the government. Then, just like a government will build an airport, they can build something that provides food security for people, okay? And they can leverage the private sector in doing that, in doing this. It's quite complex. You need transparency, but it's a growing demand in this area. And you always have to deal with geopolitical and economic downturns when you deal with this, disruptions that could impact you. And a perfect example of that is the Nord Stream. When you have geopolitical challenges, then your project, even though it's a public-private, but it gets impacted. Energy performance contracts. I don't know if a lot of you heard about these kind of contracts. This is dealing with energy efficiency. Basically, my selling proposition when I go to do this, I I would go to a client and I would say, how would you like to put $1 million in your pocket? And of course, in 2-3 years, you can put $1 million. How do I do that? Well, let's look at your industrial facility. Let's look at your campus and facility, and let's look at your benchmark your energy consumptions, and allow me to design a way to save you energy. And basically, we take our returns. We sign a contract. I will put up the cost if you can't, and then from the energy savings, I'm able to pay and get my returns on this for a period of time. It's quite interesting, okay? And we do that. It's been a growing business in this area. It can deal with retrofits of in certain facilities or campuses. One of the technology applications of the system I was telling you about in HVAC, it can work as a retrofit with an existing system, and it will save 60% of the energy from a standard system just by putting this right next to it. And it doesn't consume anything, and with proper financials, of course. It's also a way to finance probably renewable energy projects and energy management services and so on. Again, with food security as well. I keep mentioning that because I have an active project in this area with the government of Saudi Arabia and one with myself as a private investor. So again, you can see it's basically, if you do it right, there's really good, reasonable returns for investors. But if you don't make the proper risk assessment in doing this, then you can open yourself to a lot of financial risk. Okay, you need the transparency in making this happen, but it is quite a growing business in this area. So, to summarize and to conclude the presentation, if you want to boost sustainable built environment, everybody has to take a part. The government supports in terms of regulatory support, in terms of providing incentives, but then the private sector have to also step in. Financiers have to step in. We have to be able to fund innovative technologies, innovative, sustainable technologies, and basically provide some means for these innovations to come to life. Because at the end of the day, I cannot do a sustainable built environment if I don't create proper technologies that allows me to do that. And like I said, it has to deal with building materials. It has to deal with, like if you're looking at the glasses that generate solar glasses generate windows that generate electricity. Whether you're talking about building management systems and IoT and data, all together trying to do basically a better management of your facilities, of your built environment, of your city, and so forth. And again, I echo the panelists, data is the key. Data is the new oil. And how we use this data is quite important in terms of how we create a better quality of life for us and for our children, hopefully as we leave this to them. So this concludes my talk. And I'm open to questions.
Yeah, I was going to say, we actually have time for questions. If you have a question, you can come up to the microphone here in the center of the room, and you can ask your question there.
Hi, thank you for the talk. It was very interesting. I have a question on what you meant about government regulations. And what do you think is the responsibility of the financiers like yourself to actually lobby and influence positive government policy that enhances sustainability and sustainable practices?
I will answer this in a simple way, but I will echo my colleague who have said in the panel, hard regulations and soft regulations. Hard regulations, it's tough. It's really, really tough. Soft regulations, it basically, you have to do a lot of selling. You have to be a really good salesman. Now, at the end of the day, we're always dealing with people and professionals. If you can put a proper case to the regulators, then you have to work within their mechanism to immobilize that case and a lot of educations into this. But regulators can do so much. You know, for example, in the building codes in Saudi Arabia today, you know, they said you need to insulate your exterior walls, or the bricks that you use in exterior walls need to be insulated. It was soft. Nobody did it because everybody wanted to basically save money. It was cheaper. The government came back and said, okay, now it's hard. You don't do this, it will cost you. Suddenly, everybody's doing it. Okay? So in certain cases, if you put a case, and it takes time, whether it's hard or soft, but if you put a case, and a business case, an environmental case, to the regulators, because at the end of the day, they live in the city. They have an interest of what happens in the city. They will listen. It may take a long time for a hard regulation to change because there's a lot of hoops that needs to be done and a lot of arguments that needs to be done. But if it's a soft, yeah, they will work with you in doing that. So it's just a matter of putting your case together and taking it into a city. I give you one example. And we didn't have to take it to regulators, actually, but I was trying to implement a system, an HVAC system, okay, to cool, like I was telling you, we have this innovation and to provide cooling into hot and outdoor cooling, or basically fresh, 100% fresh air into humid and hot environment in doing that, which is extremely difficult. But what's the selling point of that? If you come to the guy and says, well, I have an air conditioning that you can put in your factory, it's an open volume, it will cost you this much money. Okay? To him, you're asking him to buy an asset. But if you come to him and he says, just listen, if we can reduce the heat discomfort, the humidity, you will get increased efficiency, better productivity, you can reduce injury, potential injury in the workplace. Now you translate that into numbers. The cost of what you want to put in place is quite insignificant to the benefits that you will get. It's the approach that we do of how you bring that proposition to them. It's the same thing with sustainability. And people talk about, well, a subscription standard, like the old LEED system where it's a checklist. You know, I need a walkway or a bicycle track in a desert that's 45 degrees and 30% humidity. It doesn't work, guys. But it's a checklist for me to get a certain certification. Instead, I need to be looking at the energy performance and creating a circular economy. Buying a certain percentage of the project has to be done from the local market. It's really important. Then it's a little bit different. I hope I answered the question. Any other questions?
Very good at investing financial. My partner and I would like to establish crowdfunding.
What?
Crowdfunding.
Crowdfunding, yes.
Yes. So could you help us how to get started and how easy it is? Thank you.
Well, it's all a matter of how you put your proposition. Again, it's always about how you put the proposition and how you post it. In crowdfunding, there's a lot of platforms that allows you to do crowdfunding. But it always comes back with your proposition and the potential returns and the things that happen. Just like what you do in a traditional financing, except in crowdfunding, you're basically going out. And there are a lot of platforms where you can put your case and you do that and to raise the fund, the money associated with that. But it's a one mechanism. Is it appropriate for your project? It depends on the project itself, whether it's appropriate or not. Any other questions? Great. I must have either done a good job or confused you all.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Kamel. Let's have a big hand for all that great information. Appreciate it.